ladies and gentlemen. I am also saying welcoming all delegation members, Your Excellencies. Czechia ratified almost all United Nations Conventions on transnational crime and its protocols under the Council of Europe and the prevention of the trafficking. At the same time, we already got Greta's second round, including especially on the assessment of situation in your country on the anti-trafficking activities. There are so many positive changes in the anti-trafficking policy implementation of the national action plans. But we need to go to understand on the ground, especially underlining Cedaw General Recommendation number 38 on trafficking in women and girls in the context of global migration process. Based on the State Report 2021, there was a legislative change to the criminal offence on the enticement to sexual intercourse. Human trafficking victims may be held criminally liable for their actions. However, the fact that they committed the act directly due to their status as victims may be considered a circumstance, excluding the illegality of the act, extreme urgency. If the conditions are met, the punishment may be also waived, or the imprisonment may be exceptionally reduced. When we go to the understanding, we need to know real situation. Czech citizens are trafficked for sexual exploitation, forced labor and services, crime, pornography, and marriage and the convenience. New forms of the trafficking in the human beings are constantly emerging, such as exploitation of minors, cyber trafficking, organ trafficking, and exploitation of women surrogacy. Trafficked women who are staying in Czechia illegally are subjected to the standard administrative deportation regulations, like other illegal staying foreigners, but there are exceptions, where you have including program for the support and protection of victims of human trafficking, which cooperating and helping, but it's just happening and covering the part of the women which are trafficked especially, which having the illegal status. Shortcomings identified, which your organizations, at the same time ombudspersons, the deficiencies in the recognition of vulnerable migrant women, such as the victims of trafficking in asylum and detention proceedings. They are only marginal for women and families with children. Identification of children of victims of trafficking remains insufficient. The existing victim support programs is identified for adults only. I don't want to go to the understanding of the real situation, but international labour organizations showing some recognition advice to the ratification of special conventions of the domestic workers. At the same time, the understanding that the ratification of international convention protection rights of all migrants of workers and members of their families will help to the process of the incorporation and the rehabilitation process. The factors of forced labour, including and covered at the same time, unfortunately, in the territory of the Czech Republic, especially the women, including in the several structures and several services. For example, the cases 2020-2022, women from abroad were frequently hired through such deceptive practices to work in factories, poultry farms, and hairdressing studies, but without accessibility to the services and the protection of the social services. At the same time, we see that purpose of sexual exploitation and child marriage, including especially using human trafficking affected with Roma women, vulnerable groups, women and girls at the same time. I want to underline and not go to the details, but the real situation, what's happening abroad, especially in the boards of the Eastern Europe group, especially coming from Ukraine women and different Afghan women, and which are vulnerable situation of this women and girls and children acceptance. And we have this report in Greta Council of Europe report showing the sensitive situation and real risk of these categories of the women, especially living in your country. I want to underline the non-provision punishment victims, which I'm going to the questioning, especially on this point. That's why I will go directly to my questions. I have one invitation, especially to get your political will on the understanding about the ratification of the convention, protection of rights of all migrant workers and members of their families. And I have the questions. What about the data? Because in Greta report, we have the problems of the data. At the same time, list of issues you didn't answer fully on the data implementation, labor exploitation and registered cases, statistic data prosecuting sentences for trafficking, reported cases, investigated, prosecution, convictions, and sentence imposed on the perpetrators in trafficking cases, segregated by gender, age, ethnicity, and country of origin. Just gender, age, it will be gender, it will be comparable. And my questions about the exit programs, especially improving services about the exit from the prostitution. And two more questions, number of funds of assistance of victims, measures to compensation, reparation, and rehabilitation of victims, if you can provide the numbers. And what about cyber trafficking? Did you have anything about this? on the prevention policy.